what we talked about last week, but I kind of want to, move through this because we don't have a lot of time. Lee is at his son's baseball game, so this is how we are participating in the dialogue, how we're encouraging the dialogue, how we're moving the dialogue forward. No matter where we are, we can still be participants in this process. So back to what we were talking about in regard to fascism. We went over the first 3 points. Tonight we have three more points. First, disagreement being treason. Second, point five, fear of difference. Six, appeal to social frustration. So, we're going to go through one at a time and see what's going on with our what fascism is and how these points apply to what's going on right here, right now, in real time. Not 1945, not Italy, not Germany. What are other fascist empires? Lee, what else we got? We got what was it, Ho Chi Minh? That was some fascist stuff too. I mean, fascism is not something unique to what's occurring right now. That's how we know we're up against a fascist movement, and there's some determining factors. Well, talk to me a little bit.
Well, we've got some very big groups emerging. Not necessarily big in terms of numbers of members, that are really taking the stage here with the Proud Boys, militia groups like the Three Percenters. The Three Percenters aren't a white nationalist group, but they certainly seem to show up a lot to take them at protests. So they're at the very least white nationalist affiliated. The Proud Boys are showing up, bringing people in from out of area, very much like the Bundy clan did when they had their dust up with the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to use naked aggression and really draw people into confrontations so they can then portray themselves as victims of unprovoked attacks.
True.
We're seeing it. I just saw a video posted in a group of supposedly Antifa trying to attack Proud Boys that were trying to get on a bus with a hammer. Turns out one of the members took that hammer from one of the Proud Boys who was swinging it from the bus at people that showed up to counter-protest them.
Mm-hmm.
They control the narrative and you edited videos to show what they want you to be so they can justify these claims that people who are anti-fascist are the real fascists.
True. That inversion, that the fascist doublespeak that we talked about. Your enemy is both the weakest ever. I think that's point 8. I think we get to that next week. But we've discussed it back and forth in numerous chats and dialogues. Your enemy is both completely weak. And they're a bunch of soy boys. They don't know how to work guns. They won't know which bathroom to use in a conflict. But at the same time, they're the worst terror ever. And they'll bring one hammer on a bus and somehow devastate everybody. That's the main reason why
Antifa needs to go to Guantanamo and be indefinitely detained.
Exactly.
In CIA black site prisons. But conversely, the members of the KKK who proudly march and, by the way, actively recruit and will happily tell you websites, phone numbers, a P.O. box where you can contact them. They have an organizational hierarchy. They have membership rosters.
Mm-hmm.
They are an actual organized group with state and national organizational structures.
Exactly.
When are we going to start saying, oh, well, these actual domestic terrorists need to be punished, and anyone who voluntarily affiliates themselves as a member of that group should face consequences too as part of a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah, it's the whole thing in regard to ideology versus reality. We talk about Antifa and anti-fascism as a movement, and while there are some organizations that may use the Antifa label, there is no official Antifa organization. There is no central headquarters. There is no roster of members. Anybody at any time. That's the main reason why you have all these different organizations that are able to call themselves Antifa. It's just like Black Lives Matter. The ideology of anti-fascism is something that these groups share, but how they actually go about executing their anti-fascist activity is different. I consider myself Antifa. I consider myself anti-fascist. I don't talk to any other Antifa members or organize or go to rallies and punch people in the face. I just don't like fascism. I'm against fascism. And most people I know who are of their right mind, they're against the same. I can't see why anybody would want to be, pro-fascist, but that's basically what we end up dealing with in this day and time. Let's start off on the points. First and foremost, one element of fascism, point 4, disagreement is treason. The critical spirit makes distinctions, and to distinguish is a sign of modernism. In modern culture, the scientific community praises disagreement as a way to improve knowledge. So basically, in order for us to move, my interpretation of that tenet and how it applies to what we're going through today and what we're dealing with today is that basically you have to challenge your government. You have to be able to challenge your government in order for you to consider yourself in a regime that isn't fascist. In order for you to consider yourself in a regime where you are free to speak and say what you want and say what you're thinking and voice your opinion about things, to rebel against the state and to have a differing opinion than those people who lead, indicates that you aren't you're not on the team. You're not on Team America. You're not a patriot. And this is the narrative that's being advanced by, the fascists. If you want Donald Trump to fail, then you want America to fail. Donald Trump and the state are one and the same, which is a key element of fascism. If Obama failed, it wasn't America failing, it was Obama failing. And Trump made that quite clear when he was at the G7 this week, and he was talking about how Russia was responsible for, taking back the Ukraine, but it was under Obama's watch, and Obama did this, and Obama did that, and Obama was the one who did this, that, and the third, or whatever, and now it's up to Trump to make America great again. That's the narrative. Trump is the state.
Also, you see that in this, if you don't like it, you can leave the country. All as everyone who's a problem is not American because of whatever reason. When Obama was president, plenty of people had problems, and no one on the left said, if you don't like it, leave.
True.
And I think that's a very, very distinct message that they're sending. And by broader, trying to declare Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization that is literally laying the groundwork much worse than these supposed red flag laws that they're trying to scare people with, of any dissent of the Republicans and Trump administration means you could possibly be labeled as part of this terrorist organization that doesn't exist except for on paper, and secreted away to a black site prison, never to be seen again.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern. I mean, that's not some tinfoil hat, type stuff. It's like, especially with the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and no answers. No answers in regard to, what happened to this guy. Camera is down. We don't know what happened with the camera. Was it the Clintons? Was it Trump? Like, all this ambiguity behind it, but Trump's administration, it's a federal prison. And so Trump's administration is responsible for the care of this individual who had a pre-existing suicide attempt. He was supposedly under suicide watch. Now we're finding out the guards were asleep and the camera outside his cell, was gone. And this is somebody who had millions in the bank. This is somebody who was rubbing elbows with the most powerful people around the planet, not just here in the U.S., but also in the U.K., in Saudi Arabia and other places where the affluent spend the good majority of their time. Basically, trafficking young girls for participation in sexual activity with adult men, including Donald Trump, who is listed in a lawsuit along with Epstein. And we won't know a lot in regard to how that case unfolded because the key witness is now dead. If that can happen to somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, then that definitely could happen to somebody who's labeled Antifa, and they would get missing and nobody would care except for those people who care or know about that individual because of the narrative that's being spun in regard to anti-fascism. So these are the consequences that are being told to us exist for challenging the state, and the evidence of what can and could happen to you is there in broad daylight in regard to what happened to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and the Epstein situation is very peculiar. We've got Barr personally taking over charge of the Epstein situation, and then the same Barr who took over the Mueller investigation report summary and misrepresented that, and has clearly decided before seeing any evidence that the president isn't capable of obstructing justice or any of the other things that he was potentially facing. I mean, there's plenty of conspiracy theories. Like you said, if you had information about all these people across the globe that were in the top of the 1% of the 1%, you would definitely have dead switches, things that would guarantee that you had to be kept alive or the information you knew would be released. I can't imagine that Epstein would have decades of information and have no safeguard to keep himself from being taken out.
Yeah.
It's possible that he was facilitated in faking his own death through this prison suicide in a cell that he shouldn't have been able to suicide himself in.
True.
Believe what you want. I'm still on the fence about that myself, but I've seen someone suggest that when he was put in the hospital from the first suicide attempt, that was where a switch was made. So it's possible he's living off somewhere in billionaire secret land and laughing his ass off, doing what he's always done with underage girls.
True.
And we're all left none the wiser with a body that looks like him, kinda.
True. I mean, there's no, and like I said, there's no way to address any of this. Like, we're all speculating in a situation where none of us should be speculating. We're all speculating in a situation where, you had an individual who is in federal custody, Trump's federal custody, who had exhibited suicidal tendencies, and then suddenly he's disappeared. It just blows the mind. It's baffling. Let's go on to the next point. Number 5, fear of difference. The first appeal of a fascist or prematurely fascist movement is an appeal against the intruders. Thus, fascism is racist by definition. So by fascist, we're talking about ultimate fascism. When you're talking about the most extreme version of fascism, whenever fascism reaches its final form, if you will, then you're talking about, fascism, uber fascism, fascism that the superior iteration of fascism. Because basically you always have to have an other. You always have to have a target, because when you're dealing with capitalism, and I'm not railing on capitalism necessarily, because as a democratic socialist, I do recognize capitalist markets, but I do recognize those markets need to be regulated. That's the issue with democratic socialism. It's not about having socialism by itself, in and of itself. It's about having a regulated market that actually protects the people via those regulations. It's nothing different than what we had, whenever we decided we were going to implement the FDA to make sure everybody wasn't getting food poisoning from milk and shit. But I digress. When it comes to capitalism, you're talking about a system that does not want regulation. We're talking about a system that wants to make things disadvantageous for certain sections of the people, so another section of the people can make a shitload of money. That's what capitalism is. It's about, basically, at the core, capitalizing on opportunities to make revenue and money. But the problem is, money has to keep coming from somewhere, and when money starts to run out, we've got to shift it from large groups of people to another group of people. Or we have to open up new markets. And when you're dealing in an exclusionary market that's like fascism is, where basically you're saying rampant nationalism, it's only going to be America, that means that you're closing down on new market opportunities. There's only one America. So how many other people are you going to interact with? You're going to hit a wall at some point unless we expand our territory, which is why fascism requires imperialism. Fascism requires us to exploit other markets, conquer and seize those markets, and then move into those markets, and then that's how you expand territory via fascism. Via capitalism, you go in with capital, and you basically seduce people with your capital. But fascism bypasses all that bullshit and says, you know what? We're taking over your country. We need more resources so we can expand our markets and continue business as usual. So, in order for you to compel your individuals to do that within your country and not turn against the state itself, you gotta say, hey, those guys over there are in this shithole country and they hate us, and we're the greatest nation in the world, so we need to go and bomb, attack, kill, do whatever we can, because it's our God-given right to do this to other people.
Yeah, I remember reading a book, The History of Torture, since the beginning of humanity across different cultures. And one of the things that it talked about was, in order for a state to implement practices of torture, they need an enemy, real or imagined.
True.
That seems to be a common thread in sort of authoritative state. And it gives us carte blanche to justify defense spending, justify things that we might not normally want to do, in the name of safety of the body politic. And I think it goes without saying, this tenet is pretty self-explanatory. From the get-go, Donald Trump was railing against Mexican immigrants.
Yep.
It doesn't get much more black and white as that.
True.
He set them up as a target, and now we've got acts of stochastic terrorism happening at the border, of individuals trying to take out the enemy that he's laid out.
Agreed. And we got the stochastic terrorism, and then also we have, birtherism making another appearance now. The core of the new immigration protocol that he just released, where basically, children born of military service people overseas, as well as adopted children, have to go through a naturalization process now. You're no longer automatically a citizen if you're adopted by someone in the military. You're no longer a citizen if you're born abroad. And this is the same thing that was the undercurrent of birtherism, given, Barack Obama was born in Hawaii and had to go jump through, a bunch of hoops to prove that and displaying his birth certificate, but still, Trump continued to parrot that narrative, and a lot of fascists tried to, pretend as if he was progressive on it, and that, that happened in the past and really wasn't a thing anymore. But yeah, it's popped up again. Now, unless you have two American parents and you're born on American soil, you have to go through, a test, a naturalization process. And lo and behold, I'm willing to bet, there are going to be some serious hoops that are introduced to keep that naturalization process, from happening. That preference, you can't tell me preference won't be shown. Same thing in regard to, just like you were talking about at the border, now we have a new mandate that children can be kept indefinitely. And we have a new mandate that, they don't have to receive vaccinations. So instead of us creating gas chambers, we're just creating, bacterial petri dishes that these children are just expected to survive through. And we know there's toddlers, there's babies, there's a good number of individuals down there in these concentration camps who are being exposed to these diseases that they may not have the physical constitution to endure or survive. So even if they're able to survive, that's still cruel and unusual punishment for a non-existent crime, which is basically seeking asylum.
Yeah, it's absolutely. There's tapping into that ignorance and adding fear is what gets us that hatred that allows complicity, at the very least, not caring what's happening in your name as performed by the state. And then there's people who wish they could sign up and go down and work in those camps and work on the border. There's guys who are already dressing up like soldiers and walking out in the desert in groups trying to hunt people down voluntarily. They're not being paid. They're taking time off away from their families, away from work, what have you, to go do this. And I can imagine that they're hoping that this happens so they can be the victims in their hero fantasy. So they try national attention to validate their cause.
Yeah, it's the hero complex. I think we talked about that last week. I know it's within the Points of Fascism, where basically
I think that's coming up towards the end of the middle.
Yeah, everyone is conditioned. Yeah, you're right. It's in the middle. Everyone is conditioned to be a hero. Everybody is told that they can be empowered to defend or protect the state. So every person is a member of this invisible nationalist army and responsible for protecting the state. And it's alluded that if you go out and you do something in defense of the state, in defense of the fascist agenda, you will be memorialized and or protected, which is also something that Trump reiterated this week in regard to the wall being built, where he has basically told lawmakers that if they violate federal law at the local level and they start building the wall and seizing land, they'll be pardoned, and that they'll be able to get away with infringing upon the rights of other Americans by just basically strong arming their way across the country to get this wall built. When in fact the only thing that's been built are repaired sections that were already guaranteed to be rebuilt, and they were repaired sections of the existing defenses that are already guaranteed to be rebuilt. But if you tune into Trumplandia, the thing is halfway done. And so that's another part of the fascist narrative, is this perpetual reiteration of propaganda. I think it was you who shared the video. It might have been you who shared a video, or somebody else in one of the groups that shared the video of the new talking head for Trump, the new press correspondent, who is basically saying that Trump never lies, and Andrew Cuomo, basically laughed in her face and and told her she was full of shit, and actually called Trump a liar. And you have more and more people saying that this lying thing is something that he does on a regular basis. And so, you have this alternative narrative that continues to be forwarded, where individuals are supposed to accept this alternative reality, accept these lies blatantly now. Before there was at least innuendo and suggestion and, some kind of plausible deniability in regard to what the truth was. Now we just have outright, distortions of the truth. That everybody knows. There's nobody on the face of this planet who will say that Donald Trump does not lie habitually. So for someone to go on TV and gaslight the entire nation and say that never happens and not retract that statement, but at the same time get outraged at the press for making a statement about Trump's finances that's an error in comparison to his multitude of distortions. The volumes of lies that he's told is beyond hypocritical. It's insanity.
All right. I'd also like to point out many of the companies and contractors that are building and working on the border are also big Trump campaign donators. They're getting back multiple times more money than they donated in government contracts. And they're not even trying to hide it anymore. I mean, one of Trump's financial advisors, days before the steel tariffs were announced, sold just about all of his holdings in U.S. Steel.
Dude, yes.
I mean, it's not, it doesn't take Columbo to figure out this mystery.
Yeah.
The rich finally got their puppet in play, and he's playing us all for everything he can for him and his buddies, and until the ride runs out.
Market manipulation in real time. Same thing in regard to the Chinese tariffs. Him admitting, are basically stating to, openly to everybody that, China was ready to negotiate. These tariffs are, bringing them to their knees, and they're going to come begging any day now or whatever. And tariff wars are easy to win. And then China basically coming out and saying, no, you're full of shit. That didn't happen. We didn't talk to anybody. If anything was said, nothing official is coming out of this office or whatever. And then finding out from aides later on, anonymous source aides, because these people don't want to lose their jobs, but at the same time, they want to, whistle blow, because we see what happens to whistleblowers, with Reality Winner. But yeah, his aides coming out and saying, this is all just to manipulate the markets. That he was just basically trying to give a boost back to the stock market, because the stock market is going through some shit right now, because, surprise, all of our markets are connected. The Chinese market's connected with the European market, which is connected with the Asian markets, which is connected with the Japanese markets, which is connected with the Australian markets. We live in an interconnected society. So this isolation, this nationalist isolation policy that he's trying to trumpet is, going to save us all, is completely asinine, because the world is moving forward without us. You can go on stage at the G7 and, blow Putin all you want, but at the end of the day, everybody sees through your bullshit, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to make moves on trade. They're going to make moves on climate change. They're going to make moves on national security without you. And so how does that make you more secure? How are you going to start a space force unilaterally as the United States and go up against or compete against the people that you're supposed to be protecting us from in space whenever they're all unified. You got the UK, you got China, you got India. They work together, they create their own space defense force, and we're out here all on our lonesome with a couple satellites up there, saying that we're defending America whenever space is all over.
Right. The whole space exploration, it's not any one single effort. It's always been a combined effort, and there's a global treaty to keep from weaponizing space. Because as soon as one country puts a modern next-gen weaponry orbital platform in space, it's over.
Yeah.
You would have one shot to take it down, and the entire world would be able to see who took the shot to try and tip the scales, and it would be all out, free for all.
True. That's the new nuke, right? Like that's the new. And on top of that too, there are low orbit weapons that can be deployed that aren't nuclear in any shape, form, or fashion. Tungsten rods that can be dropped from suborbital locations.
Yeah, you have the capability of magnetically accelerated particles through a Gauss cannon.
True.
You can calculate the exact speed and the mass of the projectile to get. Do you need a world leader taken out in their bedroom? Do you want the building wiped off the planet? Do you want the city gone? Literally the sky's the limit when it comes to that. All you need is the electricity to power the device, and you're off and running. And pinpoint precision.
That stage you only need. At that stage you can have nuclear weapons, suborbital nuclear weapons that can be deployed. You don't have to worry about tracking them around, the globe, and using cruise missiles that have to fly underneath radar. They'll just rain down straight from the sky. So it's not a matter of me not appreciating. This is not a situation where I am some pacifist liberal who doesn't appreciate the strategic advantage of space weaponry. It's a situation where implementation has to be part of the consideration. That basically, if we're going to do something like this, we're going to need a coalition. Doing this unilaterally is not going to work. It's not going to be effective. You have people with better, faster, superior technology and a more educated populace who are able to reinforce their space defense grid, while you have us over here falling behind in education, falling behind in science, falling behind in technology. We as far as just the speed of our network, where fiber penetration is, China and Korea and Japan all have us beat. So just getting our data from point A to point B, is problematic. Getting payloads up into space, building stations and stuff up there, we're behind, and we need help. We need assistance. We need rare earth metals, and we don't have as many of those as China does.
Part of the situation with, as far as network speak, the into capitalism, they've monopolized or monetized the transfer of data.
Yeah.
So if you want to pay, you can have it as fast as you want. But if you don't want to pay, as far as space, Tesla has really, having rockets that can land themselves, boosters that themselves back to staging areas and land themselves to be refilled and refitted and reused. That's pretty crazy. The next step, the Brits developed an engine called the Sabre engine. It's combining a liquid fuel rocket engine and an air fed jet engine in one. We're going to be able to build space planes that can take off from larger runways, but runways, like any other plane, can cruise up over 70,000 feet, kick into rocket mode, and be in the atmosphere or in orbit. Money has to be put there. Money that's being thrown away in trade wars that's disrupting global economies. The economies, capital is like water in a water wheel system. That's turning the mill that grinds the economy. So they're very protective of their water, because once it's gone, and it's hard to get it back. So if there's a hint that the market might be destabilizing, might be going towards a downturn, be real and not theory. This isn't a guessing game. It happened in the 20s. People were speculating, and it's all signs. They started taking money out. People said, "Oh wait, something's happened. Let me take all my money out of the bank." All the banks started not having money to cover loans that were being called in.
1929.
Bad shit.
1929.
All that has to do is it happen again, where we've already primed the market with distrust in American leadership. Trust is a currency, and once it's spent, it's very hard to earn back. And letting a crazy man-child who tweets things that can cause companies to go bankrupt overnight because the world has lost faith in their industry definitely does not inspire trust.
And it's going to be pay. It's going to be pay to play to get back in, because pay to play in regard to, we're going to have to pay more to get access to these supply chains, to these markets that we're being cut out of, or we're going to have to sacrifice something to get back into these markets, which is the same thing as pay to play. We're going to have to sacrifice something to get back into these markets in a less optimal position than what we're leaving right now. Because once we give it up, you're right. There is no coming back in regard to negotiating these deals. Whenever these deals are negotiated, whenever these deals are negotiated in our absence, whenever we come to the table with our hat in our hand, talking about, oh, we're so sorry about the Paris Climate Change Accord. Could you please let us, get a little something? It'll be, yeah, that's fine, but you're gonna have to give us, real estate to put our bases in Hawaii or some shit. It's gonna be some crazy concession that we're gonna have to give. That's going to make us weaker as a country. It's not going to make us stronger. It's going to make us weaker, and at the negotiating table.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the imbalance in the trade partnership with China didn't need to be addressed, but it's not as simple as, okay, we're going to slap some tariffs on you, and Trump is operating as if China is a small town in the breadbasket, and he's the Walmart that just closed out all the mom and pop stores and is the only place in town, and he can set his prices whatever he wants, and they just have to deal with it or drive 3 hours to the nearest town and the nearest store. But there's a Costco that just opened up right across the street, and China's found new markets. They've secured new trade deals. They've replaced us. They said, okay, you want to do that? Bye, Felicia.
Very much so. Very, very bye, Felicia. And that's and they've taken their business to Russia. They've taken their business to South America in regard to, purchasing soy. So, I mean, you're right. That's where we are right now. China has taken their ball and gone elsewhere. And I agree with you, just like with Space Force. Space Force is necessary. A relationship with China is necessary. But negotiating with China unilaterally is the dumbest thing that we could have done. In all actuality, we should have partnered, because if China has done this to us as a country on a regular basis in regard to screwing us over, it's not something they just invented to deal with America. They've done this in other countries too. So we could have gone to some of these other countries and said, hey, China is causing problems. We should work together to corral them. Maybe slow down some of their projects or give us equitable land or real estate to combat their influence. And that way we can, kind of stymie some of, their behavior, because collectively, all of us on the playground are saying, you're breaking rules, let's fix it. But if you're just one asshole over here fighting another asshole, it's just two assholes fighting. And no one is invested in either one of you winning. And that's the way it's been with the world.
Yeah, except for instead of two people or two children fighting, it's one child screaming at the other and going and standing in the corner crying, and the other child just going and saying, okay, whatever, and playing with the other kids like
Basically.
Nothing happened. I mean, to put it in perspective, China's 1.3 billion people, 1.3 billion people.
Yeah.
Literally the largest economy on the globe as far as people wanting to and needing to buy stuff. We can't bully them around. Hell, we can't even bully Iran, a non-nuclear power, around with a coalition of the entire world supporting us.
Thank you.
They're saying, okay, fuck you guys. We're going to build nukes now. We'll do whatever we want.
If we couldn't,
and it all boils down to no one respects us because of who is in charge of us, because he does not, he hasn't earned, much less demands respect. When you have to buy respect from people, that's not the same as earning it or use your position demanding it, and he equates it as the same. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. And as far as people, you mentioned earlier, no one on the planet would say Trump never lies. Literally, someone in one of our new groups has been saying that several times this past week. He never lies. At this point, if I did a tour of the White House and they led me into the Oval Office and he said, "Hello, I'm Donald Trump, the President of the United States," I'd have to see a birth certificate, 2 forms of photo ID.
Can I get a DNA sample? Because I'm not buying this right now.
The size of his hands, something. Where's those OJ gloves?
if this glove fits and it doesn't fall off your hand, you're not him. Yeah, no, I mean people are. It's just baffling how people are absorbing it. Are expecting, not absorbing it, but people are expecting other individuals to absorb it. Whenever we have a documented history of lies, a documented history of distortion of reality and the truth, that we're expected to just suck up and pretend is like business as usual, and no one is going. You hit the nail on the head. Nobody respects him beyond the opportunities they feel he can afford him. No one looks to him as a leader. They look to him as, hey, here's a meal ticket toward a fascist utopia. Here's a meal ticket toward white supremacy. Here's a meal ticket toward enriching my bank account. It's not like that guy is somebody I would like to spend time with and be with and have my children around, have my daughter around. That's not what's going on here. So that's the kind of persona that leads people to say, I would follow that person into battle. If we go to war and my son dies, he will have died for a just cause, died for a just leader, died for a country that had his back. There are no individuals in their right mind now who can say that definitively. They can't. No matter how much you believe in Trump, you can't say definitively, if we went to war tomorrow, you wouldn't question why we were at war. In some shape, form, or fashion. You wouldn't question that. You can't say that with a straight face. You just can't.
Yeah, that's it right there. I mean, hell, I literally just before we went on tonight, just read an article that the Prime Minister of Germany just about openly busted out laughing on camera when Trump was talking about how excited he was to be invited to visit a diplomatic trip to Germany and mentioned his German heritage. Mm-hmm. his father was kicked, or his grandfather was kicked out of Germany. Maybe they should remind Trump that
for being for draft dodging, right?
Yeah, he refused to serve military service. He came to the United States, ran hotels/brothels in the Yukon to gold miners, got rich, tried to go back to Germany and live a good life. And Germany said, you either serve like everyone else or there's the door. And that was that.
Yep. I mean, it runs in the family, apparently. It runs in the family. Let's go ahead and pick this last one. We're at 7:47, so I think we got one more to go through. Last one, appeal to social frustration. 6. One of the most typical features of the historical fascism was the appeal to a frustrated middle class, a class suffering from an economic crisis or feelings of political humiliation and frightened by the pressure of lower social groups. All right? So, I mean, we talked about this before, and the main reason why I didn't have, or I don't have a grievance with Trump voters, I have a grievance with Trump supporters, is because people around the time of 2016 were looking for an alternative because, like we talked about here, like Umberto just pointed out, they were frustrated. They were frustrated with the economy. They were frustrated with our government. They were frustrated with a variety of things on the left and on the right. Okay? Now, admittedly, the right had some more xenophobic frustrations that they had exhibited that manifested themselves in the forms of birtherism in particular. But on the left, people were frustrated with the economy too. They were frustrated with, how the government was not paying attention to it. So I get this. I get that this is an undercurrent. But I think how we've addressed it, or how we've been forced to address it, because we can talk about how our government has been compromised by entities that are not of the people. But how we've been forced to address it is in a more fascist manner. A more authoritarian manner, where we're supposed to basically, trust the will of the state.
Yeah, big thing there. The death of the middle class was not by accident. It could have been prevented, but that feeds back into capitalism. Capitalism unchecked is what clear-cut trees until entire forests were gone.
True.
Before we had the sense to regulate the logging industry. Regulations keep truckers from driving until they fall asleep behind the wheel and kill themselves or others on the road. Trump just rolled back drive time regulations for the trucking industry, which is also complaining because the trade war is slowing down moving freight across highways across the country. Trump promised to bring back coal. Now you've got old Mitch the Turtle hiding from coal miners who are wondering why their coal company went bankrupt, and they're sitting there holding their hands out asking for their paychecks, and they're not been paid for the last weeks that they worked. They're not paid a severance for being let go. They haven't been officially fired, so they can't collect insurance or unemployment insurance. I mean, these people were sold a bill of goods, and unfortunately they bought it hook, line, and sinker. You know, sure is that Nigerian prince. Trump got his votes, and they got a bag full of nothing. And when they're asking for help, he's not there. Bernie Sanders is there.
Yeah, true. He is.
Bringing them food to their picket lines, marching in solidarity with them. The only one of the candidates, to my knowledge, that showed up.
I'll give you that. I guess that's a good way to segue into what's going on in regard to our current politics. We have the left, and I do concede that basically, the left has been pushed further to the left by, Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders' proteges like, the Squad, AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Presley, and Rashida Tlaib. So you have, this leftist element, this far leftist element that is basically, actually, in my opinion, it's not far left. This is, the left, the crazy thing is the right has gone so extreme, it's made the far left requirements or requests, look regular. Like, we're just like, over here at the far right, you have people saying we want a white ethno state, and everybody who is, browner than a sheet of paper needs to be deported back to where they came from. Where you have the far left, which is basically saying, can we get health care for everybody?
And maybe not ethnic cleansing.
Yeah. Maybe let's not. Maybe let's let kids go and figure out a better way to process, immigration. It's not. I'm not asking for us to murder all of the rich. I'm not asking, to seize mansions and, give them to the homeless. I'm not asking for that. I just want to live, and I just want everybody to have a livable wage. That's not crazy.
I just want to point out, this isn't the first time in recent history, recent being in the last 100 years, that in the U.S. we've had two groups on the same side of the political spectrum. One nonviolent with Dr. King, and another one that's basically, for lack of a better word, saying fuck around and find out.
Please.
And I think that's...
please fuck around and find out.
It's happening again. Antifa's saying, these young people, for the most part, are fed up. They don't see a way out. And they're saying, if you want to do this the hard way, we got the hard way. Or you can do it the easy way and stop trying to legislate religion, stop trying to take control and let capitalists buy the government. Fair elections, fair representation. Basically, a lot of the same gripes that started the revolution.
Yeah. Can my kids go to school and not be target practice? Can we not burn? Can we not burn, the lungs of the planet in the Amazon? Can we take some action to make it so whenever our children, get to, an age where they start their own lives, they're not doing it in an irradiated, barren wasteland where they can't breathe the fucking air? That's not crazy. And for people to be outraged to the point where they are willing to use actual force should say something to the administration about the administration, and should say something to the people about the administrations that run these countries, where you have Boris Johnson dissolving parliament and whatnot because he doesn't want oversight of Brexit exiting, where you have Bolsonaro down basically fueling the deforestation of the Amazon, and then where you have Trump up here saying, fucking windmills cause cancer. We shouldn't be, investing in that kind of technology. Clean coal is going to come back, but it's not. It's really not, because I'm just lying out my fucking ass. So once we get to a point,
it reminds me of sitting here thinking an old episode of South Park where they wanted to get the black family to move, but not because they were black. I can't remember the reason, but they dressed up as ghosts to scare them because ghosts are scary, and they burned a lowercase t for time to leave. I think we're almost to the point where we're going to see a cross burning and Trump say, "Oh man, it's the T for Trump."
Yeah.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
Really not associated with any sacred clan rights. And the Rose Garden.
Yes, wear your white garments, the white garments of purity, to come burn the lowercase t of truth. Please come to the lowercase t truth burning ceremony where we burn a tea for everything that is right and just in the world. I can see that coming any day now. I can see that coming any day with all this rationalizing of fascist behavior and yeah, xenophobia. I mean,
I've also seen, on an unrelated note, an uptick of people sharing legit satire sites as actual news articles.
Yeah.
Anyone listening, the Babylon Bee is not a news site; it is satire.
redwhiteandblue.com, passing off what is the other one, political humor as truth or whatnot. Like, you should be able to, we should be at a point now where we're able to discern facts from reality. Like, I mean, I know sarcasm can't go. I need sarcasm in order to make it through this. If sarcasm goes and I have to be serious every single time I talk, that's gonna suck. I can't. I need my sarcasm.
That'll push us over to the fuck around and find out crowd.
Yeah, I don't want to be like that. I want to be able to joke about how stupid shit is, without people being like, "Oh, yep, there he goes," joking about killing the rich or whatever. Like, no, I'm not trying to kill the rich. I'm not trying to do anything like that. I'm just joking about the fact that Marie Antoinette, lost everything above her neck because she fucked around and found out. And
right.
I don't think we shouldn't have to get to that point. But yeah, like, you can't treat people like shit. You just can't. You just don't.
Yeah.
You can't call the country.
All joking aside, vigilance can save lives. People think it's silly. See something, say something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here in my hometown where I'm currently living, this week we had someone see something and they said something, and turns out their college roommate was planning on starting a shooting spree at the university if he failed to make it into a fraternity.
High Point University. Yep.
Yes, sir.
I had I have a friend down there. I have a friend down there who told me about it.
They were able to get in touch with the security department, and they were able to confiscate the weapons. He had a shotgun and a pistol, mm-hmm. Which you're not allowed to have on campus property, any educational property or extracurricular activity. And in the course of the investigation, he disclosed that he was planning on killing people if he didn't get his way, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, they found plans too I mean, they found actual plans in regard to what he was going to do.
Believe so.
Mm-hmm.
It's still pretty early in the investigation, and unfortunately, that school has a history of suppressing and covering up things to lessen the impact.
Mm-hmm.
Potential negative impact of the school.
Yeah, as most capitalist institutions are wont to do, because of the fact they want to protect their bottom line, and they want to give people the impression that things are everybody's safe, everything is fine. But I mean, to their credit, you can't predict this type of behavior. This really comes down to the culture of the environment that the institution is in. I don't mean the academic environment. I mean the political environment. Whenever you have more and more people seeing that this is a valid way to express yourself, that this is being legitimized more and more, then the crazies are going to come out, and they're going to do what crazy people do, and shoot shit up and hurt people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And these types of attacks, he did living in a single unit residence, it probably wouldn't have been found out until he started pulling the trigger.
Sure.
Just so happened he disclosed to his roommate that he had the firearms, and probably said something offhand that that made the wheel start turning, and the roommate decided, you know what, maybe I should escalate this above my level of conflict resolution. And fortunately for everyone in High Point, he did.
Well, here's a parting shot, because we talked about this when we were talking about gun control. You know, we can talk about the good guy with the gun, but the issue is, I mean, the answer by most, you know, gun aficionados would be those people who are, you know, ultra pro gun, is that every student should have a gun, and that wouldn't be a threat. But, you know, case in point, you just said there was a see something, say something. And there was a see something, say something opportunity because the student who heard about this knew that having a gun on school property wasn't allowed. Shouldn't have been something that was happening. But if it was normalized and everybody had a weapon on campus and this individual had the same intentions, you know, reporting something like that doesn't make sense because everybody has a gun. Everybody's allowed to have a gun. So, you know, why are you telling us about this, sir? Go back to your dorm room. Bam, bam, bam. Where everybody got shot up.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Well, we're at the 8 o'clock mark. Next week we'll go over the next 3 steps. I don't have them in front of me right now, but, you know, everything flowed pretty good tonight, you know, for the most part. Decent broadcast. We got our first sponsor, healinggreenfarms.com, for all your CBD oil, you know, needs. They make tinctures, customized tinctures and whatnot for you. So for pain medication, you know, you're trying to go to sleep, you want to try out that CBD craze, you know, try healinggreenfarms.com. But yeah, you know, I'm happy about, you know, where we're progressing, where we're going. Laura was working tonight. She was going to be here, but she couldn't be here. But next week we'll keep it moving, brother.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. You too.
Bye.